What's up, everybody? We're here for week 5 of the Cherry Pickers. Jim Bailey, Gary Altizer. We are going to discuss all things week 17 in the NFL. We're going to share our best bet, teaser picks, system picks. We're going to talk a little bit about the college football playoffs that are coming up and the bowl games that have happened already, and about the two NFL games that have already happened this week, which is the Browns game on Thursday and the Cowboys game last night. Let's start off with the Buckeyes. Jim, you're a big Buckeyes fan. You're wearing your Buckeyes hat right now. I know a lot of people were not happy about that game um, the other day on Friday. Buckeyes lost 14-3. Couldn't get anything going on offense, but I don't know how much of a chance that they had with the QB situation. What did you see from that game?
Yeah, that was the story of the game. I mean, even coming into the game, how excited can you get for some of these bowl games, which are kind of exhibition? But what we wanted to see was Devin Brown at quarterback. Of course, Kyle McCord transferred out to Syracuse, so question is who's going to play quarterback next year for the Buckeyes. It was really supposed to be an audition for Brown, see what he could do. I mean, he was a pretty high recruit. I know one of the recruiting services had him the top quarterback in the country. He was more composite across the board, more four-star. I mean, definitely a good recruit. Really sucks. Went out early, sprained his ankle, got his foot caught in the turf. See it clearly twisted. Tried to tough it out, stay in the game, but just wasn't happening. So in comes Lincoln Keenholz, who's true freshman, late enrollee, didn't enroll till the summer, didn't get any reps all year. I mean, he was third string, fourth string, really, most of the year. I'm sure he got some backup reps in practice, but throwing him into a game like that, I mean, it's just almost impossible. Really disappointed too, though, in the Buckeyes offensive line. I mean, they just got manhandled even before Brown went out. They just could not block Missouri's front. Really didn't give Keenholz a chance. Couldn't really run the ball real well. Looked like turnstiles up front. The Buckeyes line's been a problem all year, but not to that degree. I mean, they got whooped bad. Uh, Hopefully, it's an eye opener for Ryan Day and the program to focus a little bit more on the O line recruiting.
Yeah, really disappointing end to the season. I know all Buckeye fans wanted to get that win over Michigan to head into the playoffs. That didn't work out, a close loss there, but this was just something I don't think many people saw coming. But like you said, you got a quarterback without any practice reps. You got an offensive line that's not blocking for him. You don't have much chance on offense. I think the defense kind of held their own and did everything that they could, facing that team. I mean, Mizzou, SEC team, tough team, one you couldn't take for granted. But they can't be counted on to score points too. So it is what
Yeah.
it is. The Buckeyes really got to look at some things before next season. Uh, so we also wanted to touch on the NCAA football playoffs that are coming up. You've got some notes on those. What are you seeing from these teams? I saw how many times each of these teams have been in the playoffs, and we've got several teams that have making their first appearance.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, I'm a big college football fan. I think this Final Four matchups, two good matchups. Both of them are close games. It could go either way. Particularly the Bama Michigan game is just super intriguing. Um, Vegas has Michigan favored. I mean, you think Michigan, Bama, conventional wisdom is Bama's usually going to have an advantage, but it's a good Michigan team. I mean, they're favored for a reason. I think this is clearly Harbaugh's best team at Michigan that he's had so far. Um, Line movement is kind of curious too. You look at some of the public betting sites, and most money's coming in on Bama. You see cash and tickets. Just overall, more bets are coming in on Bama, but that line hasn't moved. It's actually went the other way a little bit. It was Michigan -1.5. Now it's up to -2 at some books. So it seems like somewhere some sharp money or Vegas is just kind of taking a stance that they think Michigan is the side here.
That's I know that makes a lot of our friends, happy to see that. But the Buckeyes fans are a little bit heartbroken. But that Michigan team is for real. I think that's going to be a dogfight. That's really going to be a great matchup. Hopefully, I mean, with all the things that have happened with Harbaugh and the controversy, Michigan was able to overcome all that. It'll be, really interesting to see how they respond. There's controversy on Alabama getting in, but when you look at their resume, I mean, they had a good argument there. And hey, this is the last year for the 4-team playoffs. I think that committee said, heck with it. We think they're better. They're heading in. So I'm expecting a good game. I hope so. Anyway, what about the other game?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw yesterday, but the Florida State Georgia game was
Yeah,
63-3 or something like that. It was
yeah,
unfair, really, to Florida State. I mean, they had just tons of opt-outs. The coach even came out and said after the game, like, it's had a major factor. Just them getting left out on the playoffs turned a lot of the players' interest in playing the game off, and just tons and tons of opt-outs. So it really wasn't a fair fight, but still 63-3s. It was something else. Um, Back to the Alabama-Michigan game, the big thing for me is coaching matchup. You know, Jim Harbaugh, who you know well at San Francisco, hasn't done well in bowl games. I mean, he's gotten Michigan up to a very high level, but even before at Stanford, he just hasn't really done well in bowl games. Really needs to get over the hump going against the master. Saban always does well in these situations. Both of them get a full month to prepare for each other. Uh, Coaching is going to be huge in this game. Chess match, two very good coaches going head to head.
yeah. Be fun to watch. Do you have any thoughts on anything else from the weekend with college football, the bowl games, or any that haven't happened yet?
Yeah, I mean, Texas Washington, I don't have a real good feel on it, honestly. Washington's kind of hard to get a grasp on, like how good they really are. I mean, they overperformed this year, expectations for sure. They fueled by Penix, the quarterback. Got a real good wide receiver in Dunze. They don't have the talent level of the other three teams in there overall. I mean, they're not as talented overall as Texas, but they've proved people wrong all year. I mean, they beat Oregon twice. Even that Pac-12 championship game, they faced Oregon. They were getting 10 points, even though they had beaten Oregon earlier in the year, went undefeated, beat Oregon outright, of course. I mean, I'm sure, and now they're getting 4.5 points. I'm sure that's being told to the players in the locker room, like, look, no one's still respecting you. No one's really giving you the credit you deserve. Texas really good. Line around 4 feels about right to me. I don't know. That's going to be a fun one to watch as well.
All right, let's head to the NFL now. Let's start with the Steelers and Browns. We'll go with Cleveland first. They got another win on Thursday night. They beat the Jets. They covered. Joe Flacco is now the second coming. Everybody in Cleveland is super excited. He is playing out of his mind right now. He's throwing for all kinds of yards. He's got really good chemistry with those guys, which is kind of crazy considering how little he's really had to play with them. That Jets defense is that's not a bad defense. That defense has been a top 10 defense all year. Problem has been on the offensive side of the ball. I don't know about you, but I am really surprised at how well Cleveland is playing right now and how well those receivers are doing with Flacco. It just seems like they've been playing together all season. Now, Cooper was out, but it didn't matter. He went to other guys. He looks when he moves, he doesn't look like he's pushing 40 years old. He must have really done something to keep himself in shape. And I don't know if they're using, a playbook that he's really comfortable with, but he just looks like he's really ready to take these guys into the playoff and be a threat.
For sure. Conventional wisdom, someone I respect, kind of leaned the under in that Cleveland Jets game. Thinking is, of course, both defenses are really good. Cooper injury. Cleveland might play it a little more close to the vest, knowing the Jets offense isn't going to do much, just kind of play conservative. And that wasn't the case. I mean, you can tell Stefanski has a lot of confidence in Flacco. Even in that game, they were down in the red zone, like 4th and 3. He went for it early in the game where wisdom is just take the points. It's the Jets. They're not going to be able to score a lot. He went for it on 4th down. Flacco does look comfortable. I mean, he does not look like an old man in any way. He looks really the exact same guy he was in Baltimore. Right. Still has a big arm, always has a big arm. So, I mean, I think we got to start taking Cleveland seriously in the AFC with the way their offense is looking. I get hard to see them really making a run all the way through, but with their defense, I mean, no one's really going to be happy to play them in the playoffs.
No, not at all. And I mean, Flacco in his career, he was decently consistent. He would have games where, he would just lose his mind and throw 3 or 4 picks, but he also could get really hot. And when they won that Super Bowl, that's exactly what happened. He got really hot in the playoffs. He just turned into a different person. I can remember watching those games, those playoff games, and like, who is this guy? He looked like Big Ben in his prime. in that playoff run that they had. He was moving in the pocket well. He was creating extra time. He was going deep. He had good connection with his receivers. Anquan Bolden was on that team. They had good special teams, but he was the difference in that Super Bowl run. I think they beat Denver. They beat Manning. They beat Brady. Then they beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl, in that lights out Super Bowl. The 49ers team that was, I mean, that team in that era with Jim Harbaugh, for them not to have a Super Bowl ring is a tragedy coming from a 49ers fan, because they had good enough teams. Things just didn't work out, but they played a dang near perfect game that game. They got a special teams touchdown, and Flacco did what he had to do. If he can get a run like that going, they have to be taken serious. Everybody's saying Buffalo's the team you don't want to play. You don't want to see that Bills team in the playoffs, but I right now would be more concerned with the Browns.
Yeah, like I said, no one's going to be happy to see that defense across from them. They're starting to get a little healthier here and there. Still have injuries on the O-line. They haven't been able to run the ball as good as they have in seasons past. I think the injuries on the O-line is taking some of that, and of course Nick Chubb being out. But it hasn't seemed to matter, because Flacco's dropping back and slinging it. He's definitely not afraid. I mean, he's going gung-ho down the field. Has a real good connection right now with Njoku. He's become a real big part of the offense, especially since Flacco's in there. So, yeah, I mean, they clinched the playoff spot. Still have a shot at the division. If Baltimore can lose today, it could come down to week 18. They still have an outside shot at winning the division.
That would be a feat indeed. Before we get to the Steelers game, talk about one more game that already happened. Last night's Cowboys-Detroit game. Tons of controversy in that game. The 2-point conversion controversy. You got half of the people saying everything is rigged in the NFL, and the other half, I've seen a lot of arguments that Detroit kind of outsmarted themselves. It looks like they sent a couple of guys over to the ref at the same time, and one or two of them reported eligible, but the ref only caught one, and the one that he caught wasn't the guy that caught the 2-point conversion. Now, I saw the official statement from the head ref after the game. I guess they are asked for comment from a couple of people. They don't have a press room or anything like that. And the official statement was that he wasn't the one that reported eligible. Now, if you watch the video, the referee runs by those guys. That you see the still shot of them standing by the referee, but the ref's not standing there. He's jogging by. And I think he looks over, he sees that number 70, hears reporting eligible, and doesn't catch the right number, or doesn't catch that two of them were reporting. So that's kind of where the goof was with that. But at the same time, the Cowboys coaching staff has got to be the most frustrating coaching staff for an NFL bettor in the league this year. Mike McCarthy threw the ball 3 times with 2 minutes left in the game in regulation there, where Detroit had 1 timeout. He could have ran the ball and still kicked the field goal, burned off another 45 seconds on the clock. We're not having this conversation, but he chose to throw the ball. On second down, he went deep on a deep pass to where there wasn't a prayer that anybody was catching that ball and stopped the clock. Aikman was out of his mind. Like, he must have mentioned it 10 times. Like, why are you throwing the ball? If he hadn't thrown that ball on second down, this game's over. Not sure about that call on second down. He mentioned it. I mean, not only that, the Cowboys were at the 1-yard line. CeeDee Lamb gets the ball knocked out of his hand as he's going into the end zone, goes out of the back of the end zone, and then that stupid rule comes into effect. The Cowboys were the better team. They won, but really they should have covered too.
Yeah, I can tell by the tone of your voice, we kind of like Dallas in that game, and it didn't pan out for us. That's how it goes. Yeah, that play on the 2-point conversion, apparently they had reported 70 as eligible multiple times during the game, as he had come in as an extra lineman. He kept reporting, and they were setting it up to make it look like 70 was just coming on in to report again, as he had done all game, when actually it was 68. So they're kind of trying to confuse Dallas. Ref somehow didn't take it. The 68 was reporting, thought it was just 70 as usual. I mean, it sucks. I mean, it was a nice play design too. He was wide open. Hate to see a game end like that. Campbell, big call, even going for 2 there to win the game, which I don't mind that. But then once they went back after the penalty, back to the 7, still going for 2, that's a bit much. I mean, I think it all ties into McCarthy passing there at the end of the game. It's just aggression. Everybody is just tied into this. We just got to be aggressive, play to win the game at all times. It's all fine and good, but there's times when you have to you have to use caution. I mean, Dallas not running the ball a few times there. Literally, they run the ball a few times. What are they going to have? 50 seconds to drive for a touchdown? I mean,
not a
game's
minute and
about
40.
over. Yeah. I mean,
it was I don't know if I'm a Cowboys fan. We were reading some of the comments on Reddit's Cowboys sub after the game, and boy, they were having a meltdown in there because of McCarthy and his terrible calls, and Quinn's defense playing back, playing that soft coverage that Goff was kind of picking them apart on. But talk about a talented team. That team is so talented that they're winning games, and they're being held back by that coaching staff. Anybody who's watched them this year can tell you that. Those two interceptions that they had, talk about athletic plays where the guys, I mean, they didn't really have a chance on that ball only because they got such good breaks on the pass and kind of dove in, secured the ball, rolled on top of it. That is a very talented team and scary team. That's another one you don't want to see if you're in the NFC. But, man, Mike McCarthy, you got to take a look at yourself in the mirror tonight.
Yeah, Dallas is super talented. I mean, that's why they're winning. They seem like they're winning despite McCarthy. They just out-talent almost everybody they play. And we've seen when they've stepped up and played teams just as talented, they haven't performed as well. At home, they're really good, but can you see this team going to San Francisco and winning in the playoffs? I mean, they'd have to play their best. They have to overcome McCarthy, literally, when they play. So in these big matchups, they're likely to get out-coached. Defense is really good, got talent. Dak looked really good last night. CeeDee Lamb is definitely wide receiver one. He's really developed nicely for them. But, yeah, that's a hard team to trust, especially if they have to go on the road in January.
Yeah, that's like we were talking last night. If they are better, more talented, then they got a really good shot to win. But if it's somewhat even, comes down to coaching. And you see, that's why they lose these big games, in my opinion. But all right, let's move to today's games. We're going to start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are getting 4.5 points, heading all the way up to the Pacific Northwest to take on the Seahawks. Seahawks have won a couple games in a row. They had a big win over Philly on Monday night a couple of weeks ago. Then they won last week after trailing most of the game to Tennessee. They came back and won by 3 points there. This Steelers team got to have Rudolph under center, I'm assuming. A team that, I don't know, every time we count them out, they come back and play well. They really dismantled that Cincinnati team last week. The Seattle team, they have some talent, but they have holes too. I mean, I really think if that Pittsburgh offense can get something going, they're going to have a good chance today. But for people not familiar with the NFC, and especially not with Seattle, that place is really, really hard to play offensive football in because of the sound. The stadium was designed to be loud. The way that the stands come out on the top level and the bottom level, it is designed for the sound to come in and out, in and out, in and out. And as a 49ers fan who had to watch us play there my entire life, as far as that stadium's considered, as long as it's been around, it's difficult. We went there, played some playoff games where you couldn't call an audible, and sometimes you couldn't hear the cadence. So that could be a factor. But I do think the Steelers got a good chance today. Getting 4.5 is a pretty good bet. We're not going to bet it because we don't have enough information on these guys from the starting quarterbacks. What do you see as a Steelers fan?
Yeah, I would feel much better about this game if it were at home. Seattle's a tough place to play. Historically, Pittsburgh struggled out there pretty severely. Even West Coast games in general, it seems like Steelers just don't play well on the West Coast for whatever reason. Rudolph over Pickett. I mean, that's kind of the story this week where Pickett is questionable to play. I mean, I'm not sure if they're still going to put him in as the backup or if they're not even going to dress him, but they announced Rudolph is going to be the starter. There's already some stories, possibly Pickett saying he's healthy enough to play. He should be the starter. He shouldn't lose his job to injury. Don't know how true that is, but I think it's the right call after the way Rudolph played last week. I mean, his stats were a little overinflated. He had a few nice passes. The one deep ball he had to Pickens was beautiful.
Yeah,
he definitely has a good deep ball, more aggressive downfield. A lot of his yardage was that yards after catch on the slant to Pickens, but Pickens having a monster game, they got to get him more involved. I mean, he jumps off the screen when they go to him.
Yeah, he does.
He should be the focal point of the passing game. So if I was Tomlin, Rudolph's the starter this week. It's probably a week-to-week thing. But yeah, it's going to be a tough game. I mean, it's playing at home against Cincinnati is a different animal than at Seattle.
Yeah, and we talk about this all the time. When you don't have a lot of tape on a guy, the advantage goes to the offense. When you don't have a lot of tape on a quarterback, you can get a couple games. You can get away with some stuff that you might not otherwise. Now, they got one game of information on him. Yeah, he's played in the past, but not with these players and these coaches, these offensive coaches. I don't think that he has really played much at all, if any. So, hey, you got to ride the hot hand. But if I was Tomlin, I'd have a short leash on the guy. You got Pickett. If he's ready to go, you can get in. And if anything, I think that him being out showed us that he really is a lot more valuable to this team than he might have seemed before, because without him, it was a disaster other than that Cincinnati game. But big implications for both teams today. Both teams on the playoff bubble. I believe Seattle is in the final spot and Pittsburgh's just on the outside looking in. It's not a conference matchup, but hey, as of right now, with 2 games to go in the season, it doesn't matter at this point. You just need the win to get in. Carroll's a great coach. Tomlin's a great coach. Both defensive-minded guys. I'm expecting a really good game. If that Pittsburgh front seven can get some pressure back there on Smith, who knows what we'll see. But if he's got time to throw the ball, he's got those good receivers to throw to. I think that they're going to come away with a win and probably cover. But I'm expecting a close game here. Before we head into our official system picks, I do have to say, if you feel like you have a gambling problem and you need help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. It is there for you, resources and people to talk to if you feel like you have a gambling problem. So we have 5 official system picks for today. Reminder, there are no Monday night games this week because the Monday night game was last night. There are college games on Monday. So the NFL and college try to play nice with each other and not conflict too much. So there is no Monday game. So all these games we're going to talk about today are for today. There were only 2 games prior to today. So there'll be 14 games today in the NFL. And we have 5 official picks. First game is one I don't really like. I don't want to take this game really as a pick, but I'm going to follow the system and the numbers. The system says to take the New Orleans Saints plus 2.5 at Tampa against the Bucks. This stinking Saints team. It seems like when we like them is when they decide to crap themselves. They got a great defense. They got good players on offense, but they seem to take every other week off. But they desperately need this game. But so do the Buccaneers. They're playing great football right now. Tampa's playing really, really good. Baker Mayfield looks like he's going to come back next year. He's got a good connection with those receivers. They're getting some points on offense. The defense has got some solid talent there. I don't know if there's many injuries today, but the system does like the Saints getting almost a field goal. I'd like it a lot better if it was 3. And we saw last week why a half a point really matters. We won a couple games by a half a point last week. But Tampa, I don't know. I wouldn't want to play them right now.
Yeah, you're spot on with saying the half point, a point here and there. You'll hear us say it a lot. Shop around these books with the plethora of books that are available to you now. Look around, find the best line on these games. The half points matter, as we saw last week. Also funny, I didn't know what order we were going to go in today, and as soon as you said, this is the system play, but I don't feel good about it, I knew it was going to be the Saints. I knew that was the one you're talking about. I looked at this one too, and I thought about making it my tease of the week with New Orleans, and I just couldn't do it. I just can't really trust this New Orleans team. I mean, it's a system pick, so we're going to roll with it. But yeah, Tampa Bay's red hot. They've won 4 straight. I was looking a little bit at their numbers today, trying to see if I should use this as the tease of the week, and it's really Tampa Bay's defense who's kind of flown under the radar. They're playing pretty good ball right now. Offense is about league average, but Tampa's defense is playing well. So Mayfield and Evans, good connection. As far as injuries, you said Kamara was ill this week, had some sort of illness, but looks like he's going to play. Michael Thomas out, which is like a weekly thing. I don't know what's up with him. He's just the last few years just constant injuries. Super talented guy, but he just can't stay healthy. Lattimore is still out. He's been out for the last few weeks. They're missing their tackle Ramczyk, who's a decent player. He's going to be out. So Tampa Bay also won at New Orleans earlier in the year, 26-9. So like I said, I tried to get there with the Saints, but hard to know what to make of that team. I mean, they're veterans all over the place. Carr, he's solid and steady, but hard team to trust.
Yeah, definitely a hard team to trust. But at the same time, I mean, this Tampa team, they're not really blowing anybody's doors off. They have played well lately, and really, they could have a couple more wins. They had uh, the Texans beat in a game where Baker took that team down. They scored a touchdown to go up. That would have been a solid quality win, but the defense couldn't hold. They lost a couple of other close games, so they could be even better than their record is right now. But in a division game, like I said, I wish this was 3 points, but it's not. It's a toss up as far as talent goes. I guess it's just going to depend on who shows up for the day. And it is in Tampa. You didn't see anything as far as weather goes?
Not in that one. Not a whole lot in weather this week. Looks good there, but it is a huge game. I mean, they're both right there. This is really the battle for the division. Huge game. Both teams should be up for it. So underrated little fun matchup today.
All right. Feel free to comment your picks if you agree, disagree, or if you got any good information about these games. Please feel free to comment them. We would like to hear from you. Next game we are headed to Indy, where the Raiders are getting 4 points heading to Indy, playing the Colts. That Colts team really just didn't show up last week uh, playing that game against the Falcons. I don't know. They didn't look like they even wanted to be there last week. They're at home. They seem to play a lot better at home. But I will say the Raiders seem to have some success against the Colts in Indy. In the last couple of weeks, the Raiders have just been finding ways to win. They scored 6 offensive points last week. They threw one pass after the first quarter and still beat the Kansas City Chiefs. You can do that when you score a couple times on defense or special teams. I don't think you can count on that every week, but Coach Pierce has got these guys playing well. He's got them up. Uh, both teams. I mean, the Raiders have an outside shot at a playoff spot. Indy is in the playoffs as of right now. I believe they're tied with the Texans right now, top of that division. I could be wrong. They're close anyway. Both teams need this game. The Raiders defense has been playing really well since Pierce took over. I believe that they are in the top 5 in the NFL in defense as far as points given up. Indy, you can't tell what you're going to get week to week with them. They do have talent on that team, but sometimes they just don't show up. But the system does like the Raiders getting 4 points there today.
Yeah, Vegas D is playing solid. Doing my notes this morning, looking over some of the stats. The Vegas defense is playing really well. Even just watching them play, I mean, Crosby is just a game wrecker. Every time you watch them play, he's just all over the place, just disrupting in the backfield, even when he's not getting a sack or getting tackled. I mean, he's just the engine of that defense. Ex-Steeler Robert Spillane playing really well. I mean, Pierce, when he got the job, came out and said he would like to build the defense around Spillane, which for Steeler fans, I mean, he's an ex-Steeler. It's like, I mean, Spillane was always solid. The Steelers could use him right now. They're just decimated at inside backer injury, so that's a different story. But Indy coming off that blowout, Atlanta. We had Indy last week in our teaser, so paid attention to that game, and they just didn't come out to play at all. Atlanta just took it to them. So what we always kind of say is how good is someone going to bounce back after a poor performance? Hard to say. I mean, it is a big game for both teams, specifically for Indy. They are right there in the race. Vegas, a little more on the outside looking in, but Pierce going to want to win the game. They're definitely playing hard for Pierce, and you can see it in his eyes after the game. They interview him. Some coaches kind of go dramatic over the top. You can tell with Pierce, it's like heartfelt, like the guy wants to win. He wants this job. So he's got to stay playing hard and playing well.
Absolutely. And sometimes that's all you need. You got a bunch of millionaires. You got a bunch of guys that need a reason to go out there and win. Should their paycheck be enough? Absolutely. But it doesn't always work that way. So seeing him get these guys fired up, they've been a really interesting team since he's taken over. The Colts, it just depends on one thing, and that's usually Minshew.
Yeah.
What kind of guy you're going to get out of him. If Crosby and that defensive front can get to him and cause some, disruptance, they do have a decent running game. I don't know much about the Raiders' run defense, but that running game, if it can get going and Minshew can stay clean, I mean, they could definitely come home with that win, and they could come home comfortably. It's a 4-point line. They could cover that easy. I do think that the Raiders have got to get something going on offense today. You know, you saw them, they scored 0. They got shut out against the Vikings a few weeks ago. And then last week they scored 6 points through one pass after the first quarter. You cannot consistently win in the NFL playing like that. They need to play more like they did in that game against the Chargers where they scored over 60 points. They're going to have to put some points on the board. So they are going to have to do that. That's going to be the key to me. Get to Minshew, hold that running game back, at least just even to an average run day, and get some points on the board. They'll be fine. All right, we're going to stay with that AFC South right now. And the next game, the third of our 5 official picks, the system likes the Tennessee Titans +4 at the Houston Texans. Tennessee, not much to play for right now other than playing spoiler. Houston, I believe they're getting a quarterback back today. I believe he's starting. They are still in the hunt. They went 1-1 without Stroud the last couple games. But Tennessee played them tough the first time they played. I believe they lost by a field goal. They're getting 4 points. They don't seem to play as well away from Tennessee as they do at home. But Mike Vrabel, we talk about him all the time. He's one of the great motivators in the NFL, and he always gets his guys up to play. The system likes them +4. You see any kind of matchup advantage here for either team?
Yeah, the division games like this, they're always tough, close, hard fought. These teams just played 2 weeks ago, went to overtime. Houston didn't have Stroud, but Houston's a little, I don't want to say overrated. I think they're being overinflated a little bit, as I've talked about a few times this year with Stroud being the shiny new toy, and he has looked good. But as you've brought up, he's had a lot more turnover-worthy plays than turnovers, so he's kind of gotten lucky on that front. Still have to be super impressed, of course, with what he's done. I mean, he's been a revelation for that franchise. Other side, Levis, is it Levis this week, or is it going to be Tannehill? Did they announce that?
I think they're going back to Levis as far as I know. I didn't see anything different.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he's looked good too. I mean, he's got a lot of physical abilities. Kind of a peculiar guy playing in the SEC of Kentucky. Didn't have big college stats at all. He just was one of those guys that had the measurables where it looked like he had a big arm, had the ability, and he's played well. You know, he's not disappointed. Tennessee's going to do what they always do, though. They're going to try to feed Henry, run the ball, play action, go to Hopkins. Big game for Houston. They are right there in the playoffs, getting Stroud back. So this is a game they absolutely must win.
Yeah, we'll see if there's any lingering, effects from that concussion on Stroud. He was out longer than usual, so he must have really got his bell rung. And sometimes that can linger on and really take you out of your game. There'd be nothing more that the Titans would like than to knock these guys off and out of the playoffs. All right, next we're going to head to Philly. The Eagles, they came away with a close win over the Giants last week. Able to stay in the hunt for that number 1 seed in the NFC. They're tied with the 49ers with the best record, but they need a 49ers loss and they need to win out. They're playing a home game against the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals are getting 13. The system likes the Cardinals getting 13 points. And there's one headline from this game that I think has kind of been swept under the rug is Arizona's head coach came from Philly. And we know anytime a coach comes from a staff and has to play them, they seem to always do well. Who knows about this Arizona team? Maybe they packed it in for the season, but I'm sure that coach has been preaching all week about how much this game means to him, how much he believes in those guys. And we have seen Arizona been able to score some points, and that Philly defense has not looked the same as of late. So we're officially taking Arizona +13. They could easily get beat by 40. Who knows? But Philly just has not looked the same. Their defense is not really playing that well. And, I mean, Hurts, he's doing his job, but he's not the guy we saw last year.
Yeah. Hard to lay that many points with Philly the way they're playing right now. I mean, they have the talent at any time to kind of to pop off and go off, especially on a team like Arizona. But Arizona's been playing tough. I mean, keep waiting for them to kind of quit for the year, and that hasn't happened. They're 3-12, but they're usually in most games playing hard for that coach. And it's a good point. I didn't think about that breaking down the game that the Cardinals coach was from Philly last year. So that always kind of adds a different element where he probably has some inside info on the way things are done or the tendencies that certain guys have, strengths and weaknesses. So that is usually a positive for the coaching side. McBride, I bring him up every time we watch Arizona. Dude is really good. And not just that, Murray's got a good connection, developed real good chemistry with the young tight end, McBride. Anytime they really need a play, they go to him. A few weeks ago against Pittsburgh, I mean, he just destroyed Pittsburgh. They had no answer. I'd imagine it's going to be the same. They're going to lean on him. Marquise Brown out. He's been out for a few weeks, so they don't have a whole lot at wide receiver. Expected big game from McBride. One thing with Philly, I was looking at them a little bit today, and their schedule the last like 8 or 9 weeks has just been absolutely brutal. I mean, they've played some really tough teams. I think we got to take that into consideration a little bit. I mean, they had Miami, Dallas, KC, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas, at Seattle, all within like the last 8 weeks. So they're always capable of popping off, but the way their defense is right now, I mean, I would never lay 13 points really with them against almost anybody in the NFL right now.
Yeah, they just made it. They made a change. I don't know if it was the coordinator, but the guy calling the defense. They switched guys out just a couple weeks ago because they weren't happy with it. Jonathan Gannon, the head coach of the Cardinals, was a defensive coordinator for the Eagles the last 2 seasons. He was the defensive coordinator that took them to the Super Bowl. So if anybody's going to know this offense, he's going to know it. Now, they're not nearly as talented on defense as the Eagles, but I'm sure that he's going to be ready for just about anything there. It's just going to depend on their offense. Can Murray run around and create some plays and keep them in the game? I mean, we'll see. Getting 13 points in the NFL, we talk about this all the time. That's a big, big number. It's tough to not take them. I didn't see what the splits were, but I'm guessing that most people were still on Philly. So we're officially going to take Arizona plus 13 at the Eagles as our 4th pick and our last unofficial pick here with the system. The Cincinnati Bengals are getting 7.5 points, heading to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. The system likes the Bengals getting 7.5 even after that really poor showing at Pittsburgh last week. The only hope that we would have right now is we hope that Browning isn't going to now look like a backup. You'll see this all the time in the NFL. You'll get a backup to come in. He gets a couple of games in and he looks great. Why is this guy not starting? Get some film on him and boom, it's done. It's over. You see why he hasn't been signed anywhere else and why he's a backup. After last week, it's kind of question mark, like, was he really that good, or were teams just kind of not ready for him because they hadn't seen the guy do much? And that Bengals team is pretty good on offense. Jamar Chase is playing today. We did find that out right before we started. So that's a big boost to them. But Kansas City's defense is really underrated. The one thing about them, though, is that offense just – it's not the same Kansas City Chiefs team. We've said this before. And they didn't look like it last week when they lost to the Raiders.
Yeah. They scored less than 20 points 4 out of their last 6 games. I mean, when's the last time that would happen with Kansas City? I mean, their offense is legit struggling. I don't think it's a mirage either. I think they got problems on offense. Kelsey, still Kelsey, but don't have a whole lot out of him today. I did hear some news that Reed is supposedly going to condense the playbook a little bit this week, simplify some things, and try to go to his main guys a little more. They're getting Pacheco back, who's a good running back for him, and word is they're probably going to go to him, try to lean on the run game a little bit, see if they can run the ball a little bit better. Big just turned into a big rivalry game the last few years. Cincinnati, I saw some trash talk coming out this week from Jamar Chase, throwing some fuel on the fire to this rivalry. So Cincinnati is going to show up to try to win. Kansas City defense is good. I was looking up some advanced metrics this morning, and one site had them as the 4th best defense in the league behind Dallas, Baltimore, one other team, San Francisco. So they got a good underrated defense. That Pittsburgh front just walloped Cincinnati's O-line last week. That was really the story of the game, where Browning just didn't have much time. And you're right, he just forced some throws, threw some bad mistakes, didn't see guys in coverage. Could see that happening again today. You have to think, really, for Kansas City, this is about kitchen sink time. I mean, they got to be almost panic mode with what's been going on lately. Have to think they're like going to be all guns blazing, coming out with their best game today.
Yeah, when Cincinnati's healthy, and Kansas City's at their best, Cincinnati still has got enough to take them out. Last year in the playoffs, It was one controversial call away from the Bengals going to a second Super Bowl in a row. They've got the guys on the field to do it outside of the quarterback position, but we'll see how he does. He does not have the same arm that Burrow does. Things will change. If he's got, it looks like if you have to have him speed things up, he can't step into his throws. That makes a difference. You say he's an NFL quarterback and that, it shouldn't matter. He's got a strong enough arm, but I promise you, when there's a half a second difference in the time you have to throw, that can mean the difference between 3 touchdowns, no picks, and the opposite happening. So we'll be interested to see. That was what it looked like to me anyway. He got rushed, he got flustered, and he just doesn't have the arm to kind of push through to make up for not being able to step into the throw.
Yeah,
But,
and Cincinnati has O-line problems going back a few years. KC, the same deal. We talk about their offensive struggles. I think a lot of it is their offensive line as well. Their left tackle, Donovan Smith, is out today, which is big loss for them. So Cincinnati's front's pretty good with Hendrickson and Hubbard. You can see them getting after Mahomes today as well. Raiders got after them big time last week. I mean, they had tons of trouble blocking the Raiders front four.
yeah, and, good point brought up here by one of the viewers. Cincinnati might have the best wide receiver core in the NFL, and Kansas City might have the worst. And that's not an exaggeration on either side there. Getting Jamar Chase back is huge. Kansas City, they just don't have, we talk about it every week. They don't have anybody to go to outside of the tight end. And, they do got a couple of capable running backs that can catch the ball. But even them, it just doesn't see, without a guy on the outside to go to, Mahomes just isn't the same guy. He's, and that's not, I'm not saying that he even needs, he doesn't need a Jamar Chase. He needs couple average guys to work with, and he doesn't have them this season. So it'll be really interesting. Cincinnati's playing the underdog role well this season so far. We'll see if they can carry that in, but they're getting 7.5 points over a touchdown. It's tough not to take them. We're officially going with them as our 5th and final pick. So to recap for the official system picks, we're taking the Saints plus 2.5 at Tampa, the Raiders plus 4 at Indy, Tennessee plus 4 at Houston, Arizona plus 13 at Philly, Cincinnati plus 7.5 at Kansas City. All road teams. I do not like this one bit. Nothing feel good about with any of these really, but we're going to roll with the numbers there. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of these other games that are happening. But first, I do want to mention, if you feel like you have a gambling problem and you need help, 1-800-GAMBLER is there for you to provide you with resources and someone to talk to. All right, we're going to start with the non-system games. The biggest game of the week in the AFC, the Miami Dolphins are headed to Baltimore to face the Ravens and what could decide the number 1 seed in the AFC. Miami is getting 3 points. This was a too close to call game, not enough confidence in either side for us as bettors. But talk about a big game coming down to 2 teams vying for that number 1 seed. Miami coming off of a close home win over Dallas. Baltimore going to San Francisco, winning a game that was a lot closer than the score. 49ers threw 4 picks, 3 from Purdy, 1 from Darnold. And on 3 of those picks, 2 were batted in the air. And I listened to the PFF podcast on Monday or on Tuesday after that Monday game. Between 97 and 98% of all batted passes fall to the ground. So to have 2 intercepted in one game is almost unheard of. Another pick came from his arm being smacked as he was going back to pass. That's just unlucky. Not only that, 49ers lost by 14, but we're at the 1-yard line, and Sam Darnold did a number on a couple of plays, took 11-yard sack, got a penalty, and then threw an interception. So that was really a 7-point game. But you know what? Baltimore came away with the win. They played on the road. They played intense. They even took a safety in the first quarter and was able to overcome that. Lamar Jackson's got to be the favorite to be MVP right now, just because of how important he's been. They are a 3-point favorite. Miami, they finally beat a team with a winning record, which in reality, I don't know that they should have, because Dallas fumbled on the 1-yard line again in that game, or that would have been a win for the Cowboys. They just can't seem to put things together. I don't know about you, but if I had to bet, I'm taking the Ravens today.
Yeah, Miami has some injuries as well. They're out Jalen Waddle as well as the running back Mostert. I mean, they got depth there with HN at running back, but with not having Waddle hurts for sure. Baltimore will be able to shade coverage towards Hill. That's a big loss for them. I saw Ramsey, the cornerback, was a late addition to the injury report. Sounds like he's going to play, but he might be limited, which again is a knock against Miami. Positive for Miami is Baltimore coming off the short week, playing on Monday night late, Christmas night, clear on the West Coast. Now have to travel back. Tough spot for them where that was like the game of the year for them as well, where they were going all out to win that game. Of course, Christmas night, big stage against San Francisco, looked great. I mean, they did get some turnover plays, but I mean, they went toe to toe with who we thought, and probably I still think is the best team in the league, San Francisco. Baltimore's defense is just way better than Miami's. I think offense, slight advantage for Miami, but the defense, I think it's not close. It's a good matchup, though. Miami does have the number one scoring offense against Baltimore's number one scoring defense. So Baltimore -3. I think there is some value there on the Ravens.
Yeah, for sure. And, what Baltimore did well was they took advantage of that poor 49ers offensive line, and they got tons of pressure, and they caused that 49ers offense to not click. And, Kyle Shanahan's offense, he needs things to be in rhythm. And Purdy's been really good outside of structure, but when you're getting that much pressure in your face, it's tough to do. They really need to do that with Tua, because Tua is kind of a similar player, another guy without a really strong arm. So everything is based on timing with him. Sometimes you'll see him release the passes to some of these receivers, these quick guys, and he's throwing that pass so early to such a specific spot that, man, it can't be off at all, or those are going to turn into turnovers or incompletions. So if Baltimore can do what they did to San Francisco and interrupt that, they got a really, really good chance to do so. Tyreek Hill is making a push for an MVP season. He's leading the NFL in receiving yards. He's got 12, I think, receiving touchdowns. But I think this Baltimore front seven could really cause some havoc. And like I said, all you really have to do is get Tua out of his rhythm and get him to not be able to release that ball so early, because he does not have a strong arm, and they could really disrupt that offense. Waddle is out and Mostert is out, I believe. That's two big losses for them. But for the Ravens, their safety, Hamilton, that young kid that they have, the number one ranked safety in the NFL, is questionable. He got hurt in that 49ers game. It looks like they're not sure if he will play. As of right now, I just checked, he's questionable. That would be a huge, huge loss for them. I still see Baltimore as the better team here.
Yeah. Hard to see Miami. Honestly, are they tough enough to go on the road to play a team like Baltimore? Baltimore always has a good home field advantage. Their fans are going to be jacked up. Is Miami tough enough to go on the road and beat a team like Baltimore? They haven't really shown it yet. I mean, their offense, it's capable. I mean, with the way when they're humming, they can beat anybody really, but consistently, I don't know. I mean, those injuries are big. Big game. I mean, Miami needs this. If they lose and then Buffalo wins today, it's going to come down. All the marbles for the AFC East is going to come down to next week. So Miami would certainly love to win this and avoid that. But yeah, I think there is some value on the Baltimore side today. Had a viewer there question for weather. This game, there is not any weather implications. Looks pretty clear. Pretty clear week. The only two games I saw any weather was Atlanta, Chicago. Looks like a little bit of light snow, which that game we're going to talk about here soon. New England, Buffalo, kind of same deal. Both light snow, a little bit of wind, nothing too crazy.
I'm checking the NFL weather right now. It looks like in Seattle, they're calling for an 80% chance of rain. I don't know when, or I don't know how long it will last. Maybe that's a new update here. That looks like another one. It's showing that so anybody interested in that Steelers game, that it's kickoff, it's calling for an 80% chance really throughout the whole game. So it looks like precipitation probability is at 80% chance, and it's going to be cloudy and about 50 degrees or so. So
yeah,
might be something to keep an eye on.
You know what they say about the weather, man. I mean, this stuff changes like hour to hour.
Yeah,
I looked at it literally an hour ago, and it was all green, nothing. And I mean, the weather can change hour to hour, but it is frustrating. Sometimes you look at these and it says no weather and you bet it and you turn on the game and it's like a monsoon. You're like, you got to be kidding me. Why didn't they see this coming? But I mean, it's the weather. What are you going to do?
Well, it's in Seattle too, which is the rainiest
Yeah.
place in the country. So you could never rule it out there. A lot of times they just get drizzle, so it's not a real hard rain. So sometimes that doesn't make much of a difference to an NFL team. You'll see even sometimes in hard rain, sometimes the guys that the quarterbacks will say they can grip the ball better when they throw it. Now catching it's a different story, but it might not make any difference at all. Just something to keep mind of. All right, the next game we're going to go to. This is another one with playoff implications. The New England Patriots are headed to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Patriots are getting 14 and a half points. Huge amount of points, but New England's the worst offense in the league. They just have looked terrible this year, but they beat Buffalo the first time they played. So to be coming into Buffalo after beating them earlier in the season, getting over 2 touchdowns, tempting to take New England here, but Buffalo has played well as of late. They can not play well too. They have those games. Belichick, you can never count him out, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know. I don't have the guts to take New England plus 14 and a half, but I wouldn't be surprised if some sharp bettors are taking it with that big of a spread right now.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. That's a huge number. New England has shown some signs of life lately. Doesn't seem like they've totally quit anyway, which it really isn't surprising. Huge game for Buffalo. I mean, if they lost this, they're in serious trouble, serious danger of missing the playoffs. So I mean, it's a must-win game really for Buffalo. You'd have to think New England would love to play spoiler and knock them out. So I'd imagine New England's going to be up for the game. But 14 points, I mean, whew, that's a ton of points. I would imagine if you just bet it purely by numbers, I don't think there's any way you could reach 14 on this spread. I think it's probably a few points too high, but I mean, can you really trust New England? We've kind of discarded New England as a team. We're just really not going to bet on after they burned us time after time earlier in the year. So yeah, I'm sure there are some sharp money on New England here.
And they burned us on stupid things like missed field goals or penalties after a score. It was just really dumb stuff. But Belichick still has that defense is still really good. Buffalo has a pass rush that can really wreak havoc. And Bailey Zappi, I think he's starting today, is not one that I would throw money on if you're going to have one of the best pass rush teams in the NFL going up against you. So just a game that will be interesting to see how close it is and if Buffalo can come out with the win. All right. Next game here, we're going to Chicago as the Bears host the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta's getting 2.5 points. The Bears, boy, they lost a heartbreaker against the Browns. Threw a deep pass as time expired, bounced out of a couple of guys' hands into a Bears player, fell to the ground. Chicago have been playing much better as of late. Atlanta, I don't know, are they a different team now with Heineke under center? They look like it last week. I know it's one that you wanted to touch on. What are you seeing in the matchup here?
Yeah, I like the matchup for Chicago's defense. I mean, they've been really good against the run. Atlanta loves to just try to run the ball. So I think Chicago's defense is going to have some success here. As we stated, a little bit of weather today. Doesn't look too severe, but it looks like a little bit of precipitation, snow, and some wind. It's a windy city, so probably not too, uh, they're probably accustomed to it. Chicago is playing well. They've won 3 out of 4, and the one they lost is Cleveland, where they went toe-to-toe with them on the road. Playing some good ball. They're playing hard for the coach. We talk about Fields, how talented he is, can always run around and make plays. Atlanta looks like they're all but eliminated from the playoff race, so they have slim outside hope, but realistically, it looks like they're done. So you always have to wonder how much motivation do they have to go out into the cold up north and play outdoors. So I actually like Chicago here. I think there's some value on Chicago. A few different lines, 2.5, 3. As I said, always look for the best line, but I like Chicago matchup wise here today.
Yeah, Atlanta losing that game a couple weeks ago in Carolina. They were driving, they were inside the 15-yard line, threw an interception at the 2 while up 1 point. Carolina drives all the way down, kicks a field goal as time expired. That cost them their season. That really talk about a frustrating game from a betting standpoint. You got a team that just was better all around. It was pouring out, so it kept the game close. And Desmond Ritter makes a horrible decision, makes a horrible throw, cost them the game. Arthur Smith had to be beside himself after that pass. That's what really seemed to what caused them. They have a super small chance to win that division. If they win out, and then everything has to fall kind of perfectly. I think New Orleans has to win today, and then next week both those teams have to lose. Then they can get in by winning that division, but it has to break perfect for them. I really like what I've seen out of Chicago, and I saw that they looks like Chicago's going to bring back Eberflus. They said they plan on bringing him back next year, which I think is that's a kind of a head scratcher. I don't know if he's really got the most out of that team as he could have, but they do seem to be trending in the right direction. So I guess they just want to kind of keep continuity and see if they can't get better to go on from here. But Justin Fields does got some potential, and he seems like he's getting better and better as time goes on. All right, we're just going to hit up two more quickly here. We got the Rams -6 at the Giants. Rams, if they can keep winning, they will head into the playoffs. They have a tiebreaker over the Seahawks. The Giants played a tough game last week against Philly. They have another starting quarterback. Tyrod Taylor is coming in, but the Rams really clicking and playing well right now. You see this one being close?
Yeah, we're going with the old Tyrod Taylor. Giants, they benched old DeVito mid-game last week, went to Tyrod, played pretty good, almost brought him back against Philly, so gives them a little more solid floor, a little veteran presence with Taylor. You know, he's never going to be a world beater, but he's been around a while, so I think that probably boosts their floor. Rams are playing good. Whenever I've watched them play the last few weeks, I mean, their offense looks like it's humming. The rookie Williams, running back, has been a difference maker for them. He's a real shifty, tough runner. They're really running the offense through him now. It's exactly how McVay likes to play offense is run the ball and then play action, and they're just doing tons of play action. They got Nakua, who's another one. I mean, they nailed the draft with both of those guys this year. He's actually looking to set the rookie receiving yards record today for most receiving yards by a rookie in a season. So got him and Kupp, of course, running the ball to Williams. I think the Rams are going to have some success on offense here. Giants could too. I think there's going to be kind of an underrated game where we could see decent amount of points scored.
Yeah, definitely could. And you know what? The Giants, they seem to play better when Tyrod's in the game. I don't know if that's a trend or that's circumstantial, but they do seem to play better when he's under center. So we'll see. They're trying to play spoiler. All right, the last game we're going to go to, the 49ers are heading to Washington. They are 14-point favorites. Jacoby Brissett was supposed to start for Washington today, but he got ruled out last minute because of an injury. So it will be Sam Howell again. 49ers coming off of that really disappointing game last week that we touched on. We talked about Baltimore, where their offense just couldn't stop turning the ball over and had some really bad balances. They're playing the worst pass defense in the NFL this week. And not only are they the worst pass defense in Washington, they've got some starters out. I think they've got two starters in the secondary out today. 49ers are 14-point favorites. If you're that offense, you've got to be crawling out of your skin to just forget about Monday night. It is a short week and you're heading to the East Coast, but the difference in talent here should show the 49ers to win comfortably. If I was betting, I'm probably taking San Francisco here -14. I'm not going to lay any money because it is too close to call as far as the system goes. But if I'm Brock Purdy, I'm Brandon Ayuk, I'm Deebo Samuel, I'm George Kittle, I'm Christian McCaffrey, I'm Trent Williams. We want to put points up.
Yeah, after the game last week, when they lost to Baltimore, immediately you said, look for the 49ers next week. I mean, that's going to be a good spot for them after that performance. They're going to want to come back hard. And then we look at the line, and it's 14 on the road. Like, oh, man, it just never feels good laying that many points on the road. But as you said, Washington defense is just trash. I mean, they're just not good. They're probably the worst defense in the league, statistically at least. We watched a little bit of that Jets game last week. We had thought about betting the Jets and then didn't. And then the Jets got up big, and it looked like Washington had given up. They didn't even show up to play. They put Brissett in, and they come storming back and made a game of it late with Brissett. So it seemed like he gave them a little bit of extra juice. But, yeah, going back to Howell this week, which if he's healthy, really he was probably the smarter decision to just see what you've got in him a little bit more. How much fight is Washington really going to have today, this late in the season, playing one of the best teams in the league? I mean, you could certainly see this one getting ugly.
Absolutely. I mean, Howe showed some promise early in the season. Seems like he's getting worse, but that team, they traded away a couple of their best defenders. Ron Rivera's on his way out. I don't know what they have to really play for right now other than playing spoiler. Chase Young does get to have a little homecoming here going back to Washington. I know they said during practice this week he's been fired up all week to get out there. I bet he's probably going to make some noise there on the defensive line in that front. I still, San Francisco, if they don't come out and win big here, it might be a little bit of panic mode for them because they're going to have to play the Rams next week and win both games to 100% secure that number one spot. So before we head into Bailey's best bet and his teaser pick of the week, we do want to say one more time, if you feel like you have a gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER is there for you as a resource, provide you someone to talk about your problem and how you can be helped. All right, Bailey, let's go to it. Your best bet last week was the Browns, I believe. They won big and easy. That cashed easy. You did go with Denver the couple weeks before that. I really hope to God you're not going with them this week. Who do you have as your best bet this week heading into week 17?
Yeah, so we're 2-2 on the best bets of the week, which floating around 500. So hopefully we can get over the hump today. It's a tough choice. I like a few different games, but settled on Baltimore. We're going to lay the 3 at home with Baltimore. I mean, you don't love laying points like this against a team as good as Miami that could explode, but I just don't see Miami being tough enough to consistently win on the road at Baltimore. It does scare me, the short travel, after the short week coming back from San Francisco. But I think Baltimore flexed its muscles last week. They look like the class of the AFC. They're going to want to come out here and win to clinch the division. They also clinched the number 1 seed overall with a win, which means they could potentially rest guys next week. So big game for Baltimore. Laying 3 at home. Going to be our play of the week.
All right. Baltimore -3 at home playing Miami. Bailey's best bet. And we always conclude a teaser here. What do you have this week?
Teasers also 2-2 overall. We lost last week back in the Colts, who just got their doors blown off in Atlanta somehow. So first pick, we're going to go with Chicago. They're laying 2.5. So we're going to the 6 points to make them a 3.5 underdog. So you're going to get 3.5 points with Chicago. General conventional wisdom and teasers say you're really not supposed to tease through the 0 to make a favorite, an underdog like this. But I think in this game where it's going to be low scoring, the total's really low. There's not going to be tons of points, you wouldn't think, where every point's going to be huge. I like Chicago in the matchup. I don't see them getting blown out by Atlanta. I said that last week with Indy, but you never know in this thing. So we're going to go with Chicago plus 3.5 is the first leg. Second leg, I'm actually going against one of the system plays this week. I'm going to go to Kansas City. I just think that they are in kitchen sink mode this week. I think they're going to give everything they got. I know they've kind of been in that mode for a few weeks, but losing at home to the Raiders like that in that fashion, national TV, you have to think they're embarrassed. News coming out this week where Reed's going to revamp the playbook a little bit. So we're going to go with them. Shop around. There are some books out there that still have KC -6.5. I know the system pick was 7.5. BetMGM specifically has Kansas City at -7.5. So there's definitely some books out there that still have -6.5. So that's going to be our play, taking the 6 points off of there. So you have KC -0.5. So they just have to win the game, and you'll cash that bet.
All right. So teasers, Chicago getting 3.5. So they have to lose by 3 or less, and Kansas City just has to win the game. Tease those two together, as well as Baltimore -3 at home for Bailey's best bet. So that will do it for episode 5 here of the Cherry Pickers. I'd like to thank everybody who's been tuning in. Been getting pretty good numbers all week. Feel free to share the link and spread the word. We do appreciate it. So for Jim Bailey and Brian Scott, DJ Oakley back at home base, I'm Gary Altizer. Thanks for tuning in to YSN. We will see you next week.